Well, now that the oil change is done, I want to change the coolant in the radiator. If you recall, in a couple of episodes ago, I mentioned about a rattle of some sort from the front of the engine while it was running. I discovered that the blades on the fan are actually loose. But in order to get to those, I need to remove the radiator. Now, I could do that with the bonnet in place, but it's only 4 bolts to take off the bonnet, so I'm going to remove that. The only thing I have to deal with is the wiring harness. It's all hardwired to the front here, so I'm going to put a plug into this area of the wiring harness here. That plug will be weatherproof and dustproof, and it'll just allow me to disconnect that, undo this bolt here, this one here, same on the other side, and the entire bonnet will lift off in one piece, or without having to remove any of the wiring on the front of the car. So here's the plug I decided to get. Now there's 8 or 10 wires going to the front of the car now, so I thought, well, I'll get an 8 or 10 pin plug, but I wanted to allow for the possibility of maybe putting fog lights or driving lights on the front. So what I've done is I've picked up a pair of 12 pin plugs, because that's just the way the package came. And I'll put a link in the description below to where I got these. And the kit came complete with all the necessary pieces and all the necessary pins for both sides of each of these plugs. And I did pick up also the crimping tool that'll be needed for that. And I'll put a link for that in the description below as well. So rather than show you on the car how this all goes, I thought it'd be easier to do it on the bench on how to set these plugs up. There's a female pin and a male pin, and then the female pin gets mounted into the male part of the socket. Now, to hook this up to the wire, you'll see that there's a couple of tabs on these connectors here, and then they get crimped over, and I picked up the crimper tool, as I mentioned earlier. Again, links will be to this in the description below. So the idea with this is the wire gets pinched by this small part here, or the one closest to the pin itself, and then this narrower tab here gets crimped over the wire or the insulation itself. So I'll just strip a bit off the end of the wire. I can see I don't have much wire or actual wire exposed. And then the idea with this, this would go in here. The small tabs would pinch over the insulation, and the large tabs would pinch over the wire itself. Now I'll see if I can show this. If you'll notice, I'll use this as a pointer here. You'll notice in the crimper, there's actually a step in this part here. The wider part will crimp around this insulation, and the skinny part will crimp around the wire itself. So the idea with this is to get your connector into position in the crimper, like so, and just do it till you're one click. And then you can see that I've got the end of the connector flush with the face here, and it just sticks out the other side. Now I can stick the wire in, making sure that it goes into that, and then just crimp down, and there we have it. You can see the crimp on the insulation is good and tight, and then the nice crimp on the wire itself. Now once that's done, it's a matter of pushing this through, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but there should be an audible click. And then you can see the pin. Now you can see my female connector inside the male housing, and that's in there good and solid. The nice thing about these connectors is they're actually easily removable. and just take my small flat blade screwdriver, pull the pin or pull a little tab back, and then that wire just pulls right out. Like so. Now once those wires are, all your pins are in place, there's a wedge that would pop in there, and that secures everything in place inside the socket itself. I thought this would be an easier way to show you how to set up these Deutsch connectors rather than trying to do it while working on the car. So now I'm going to go back to the car and just figure out where I'm going to actually put the plug itself, and then cut the wiring harness, and then I'll remove the bonnet, and we can get to work on wiring things up. I've got the battery disconnected at the quick disconnect on the negative terminal. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to remove the cover off the harness, and then I'm going to cut my wires right about here, and then I will mount the female part of the Deutsch connector onto the side here. So that one will be fixed, and the whole thing won't kind of waggle around once it's all hooked up. And again, you can see the hinges here. I just have to undo either this one or this one to release the stay. And then this bolt here is the actual one that the bonnet hinges on. I'll remove that on both sides. And then with the wire cut, I can lift the bonnet off. Then I can work comfortably on getting the Deutsch plug into the harness here on the car and work on it with the bonnet off as well. Well, you can see I've got the wire cut. So now I'm just going to put the bonnet back down, undo the bolts. I got some help, and lift the bonnet off. And then we can get to work on actually putting on the first of the connectors. So there we go, have the bonnet off and sitting over out of the way here. And then I'll get in and I'll be able to work on the wiring harness up in here. And you can see I just use some pool noodles that I split down one side, clipped over the edge of the bonnet so it can stand on its end and not damage anything. So now that that's off, I can work on getting the plugs installed on both ends of the harness, in here and in the bonnet. And then once that's all done, I'll get to work on draining the coolant, removing the radiator, and getting to work on that fan. So I'm going to work on the body side first, and I'm going to use the male socket on this because the female part, this one here, will be fixed in place on the bonnet. So I'll get to work on getting all the male pins put on the ends of these wires, and then I'll do female pins on the end of the wires on the bonnet. Hopefully that we'll get everything lined up correctly, and when it goes time to put the bonnet back on, and it's just a matter of plugging that back in. Okay, well, I have the female pins in the male plug, and then next is just to put this wedge in here. And let's see if I can do that one-handed. And that just will slide in. Oh, there we go. Slide that in until it So I'll get this one clicked into place, and then I'll get to work on the one on the bonnet. Okay, now that I have the car side done, I just have to repeat the process on the bonnet side of the harness. And I marked I've done a markup of which wire goes where, so I make sure I get everything lined up with the new one. And so let's get to work on that. Well, here I've got the female plug wired with the male pins inside. You can see the little green wedge down in there. And I've got this sort of tidied up. I'm going to pick up some appropriate tape to wrap that. And when my brackets get here, I'll be able to mount this up in here, so that's fixed and won't be rattling around. So now I've got that end done. And you can see now I've got the orange wedge completely into the housing here. I've got this tidied up, and again, I'll get that the appropriate tape, get that wrapped up, and then that's ready to go. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode in our Bugeye build. Thanks for joining me. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody that supported the channel by leaving comments, contacting me directly by email. I'll put that address at the bottom of the screen. And by picking up merchandise such as this shirt. There's hats, there's mugs, a couple of other things in the store there, and there's links below to that. And also there's those that have contributed with advice, with parts, with loans of tools. Your support of this project has been very much appreciated, and thank you. If you enjoyed this week's video, please be sure to share it with your friends. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget that little bell icon. Click on that and you'll get notified when the next video comes out. In that next video, I'll be working on the cooling system and repairing the loose blades on the fan. So thanks again for joining me. My name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.